You just don't have the grit to run a company, little brother. My name is Alex Mercer. For 15 years, I was the operational core of Pinnacle Hotels, our family's exclusive hotel chain. At 42, I wasn't after a fancy title or a corner office. My job was simple: ensure our 8 properties across the Northeast operated without a hitch, our employees felt appreciated, and our guests always returned. Across the polished desk, my sister, Isabella, stood with her arms folded. She had been the president of Pinnacle for a mere 11 days, ever since our father transitioned to the chairman's role. Her first major decision, it seemed, was to oust me. "The board concurs that we need fresh leadership," she said, her eyes fixed on me as I cleared out my desk drawer. "We've brought in a top consultant from Hyatt to take over your duties." I simply nodded, keeping my expression unreadable. The board she referred to was comprised of herself, our father, and 2 of her MBA classmates she had appointed just last week. My sister had always been the public face of Pinnacle, charming investors, headlining industry events, and taking all the credit for our success. Meanwhile, I was the one handling the tough supplier negotiations, overseeing major renovations, and cultivating the relationships with our staff. The unglamorous, yet vital, work that kept us in the black. "You'll receive 6 months of severance," she added, glancing at her watch. "HR is preparing the paperwork now." I placed my family photos into a box, taking care not to damage anything. The last item in was a framed picture of our grandfather in front of our very first hotel in Burlington, a photo Isabella had never bothered to display in her own office. "Nothing to say?" she pushed, her immaculate blazer a perfect match for her perfect manicure. A sarcastic smile touched my lips. "Good luck with the Oceana renovation." A flicker of panic crossed her eyes. The Oceana was our largest hotel, and its renovation was plagued by delays and budget overruns, a mess she would now have to navigate on her own. "We'll be perfectly fine," she said, quickly regaining her composure. "My consultant has handled turnarounds for properties twice this size." I nodded once more, picked up my box, and walked out without another word. 15 years of dedication, erased in a 15-minute meeting. What Isabella didn't know, or perhaps had conveniently forgotten in her power grab, was a piece of advice our father had given me 5 years prior. "Never keep all your assets in one place, Alex," he had said. "The hotel industry is in our blood, but true wealth lies in the land." I had taken his words to heart, making strategic moves in the background while my sister chased accolades. As I drove away from our Boston headquarters, I wasn't anxious. I was patient. And patience was about to yield a massive return when the land leases came up for renewal in just 3 short months. I grew up watching my father build Pinnacle hotels from a single, struggling inn in Vermont into a renowned regional name. While Isabella trailed him at galas and shareholder meetings, I was drawn to the boiler rooms and back hallways, learning the mechanics of our buildings from our maintenance crews. By 16, I could fix a faulty HVAC unit and negotiate with laundry suppliers as proficiently as any seasoned employee. "Your sister sees the grand vision," my father often remarked, not unkindly. "You see the essential details that bring it to life." It was a partnership that functioned perfectly, until it didn't. As my father got older, Isabella's ambition sharpened. She started hiring consultants who churned out slick reports advocating for organizational restructuring. She spoke of national expansion, celebrity endorsements, and lifestyle branding. At times, I wondered if she even remembered that our core business was offering people a clean, comfortable bed for the night. 5 years ago, when Dad first mentioned his intent to step back, I knew what was coming. During a routine financial review, I discovered that our three most lucrative properties, Burlington, Portland, and the Oceana, were all situated on land we leased, not owned. The original 99-year leases had been signed decades ago with elderly owners whose heirs were now eager to sell. "This is a major vulnerability," I told my father. "If a third party buys that land and triples our lease rates, we're trapped." He nodded. "I've been meaning to handle that, but all our capital is tied up in the new Providence project." "I could buy them," I said quietly. "Personally. Then I'll lease the land back to Pinnacle at the current rates." My father peered at me over his glasses. "That would take a massive personal investment, Alex." "I've been saving," I replied, "and I have faith in our company." The next day, he put me in touch with our bank. 3 months later, I was the owner of the land beneath our 3 flagship hotels. The company was still the tenant, bound by a 5-year preferential lease agreement that was now approaching its renewal date. "Does Isabella know about this?" my father had asked as we signed the final documents. "It's all detailed in the corporate filings," I said, "but she doesn't read those." He chuckled. "Your sister sees the forest. You see the trees. One day she'll realize how critical that is." Driving home after being fired, I wondered if that day had finally come. The morning after my termination, I woke at 5:30 a.m. just as I had for 15 years. But today, my phone was silent. No overnight reports, no emergencies to manage. I made coffee and watched the container ships glide across Boston Harbor, admiring their silent, steady efficiency. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Marco, our head of maintenance at the Oceana. "Heard what happened. They're lost, man. The new consultant is already cutting corners on the renovation. Not good." I sent a simple thanks, but offered no solutions. It wasn't my problem anymore. Then, a message from my father. Breakfast at Rosie's. 8 a.m. When I arrived at the old diner, he was already there, looking more tired than I'd ever seen him. "She told me after the fact," he began. "I would have done it differently." "But you didn't prevent it," I stated. He sighed. "Isabella believes Pinnacle needs to evolve, to become more corporate and less of a family-run business." "And you agree?" "I think," he paused, "that your sister has a vision for growth that the board finds persuasive." The waitress brought our usuals without even asking. "The land," he said after she left. "Isabella doesn't grasp the full scope of the lease agreements. The corporate documents spell it all out." "You know she doesn't read the fine print, Alex," he said, giving me a pointed look. "The renewal is in 3 months." "I've already consulted my lawyer about the new terms," I confirmed. "What are you planning, Alex?" In that moment, I realized I had been preparing for this for years. I had imagined feeling triumphant, vindicated. Instead, I just felt weary. Market rate leases, I said. Nothing more, nothing less. That will cripple our operating costs, he stated. Yes, I met his eyes. It will. 2 weeks later, Isabella finally called. I let it go to voicemail. Alex, we need to talk about the transition. Some crucial files are missing. Call me back. No apology. Just business. The next day, she showed up at my condo unannounced. You're ignoring me, she snapped. I'm respecting your decision to remove me from the company. There are gaps in our property lease information, she said, her designer heel tapping impatiently. Everything is on the shared drive, organized just as it's always been. Well, your replacement needs context. My replacement is a top consultant from Hyatt, I said, throwing her own words back at her. I'm sure he can figure out a filing system. A week later, a certified letter arrived from Pinnacle's lawyers. I forwarded it to my attorney. Meanwhile, calls from panicked Pinnacle employees started trickling in. The new consultant was slashing hours and deferring essential maintenance. Morale was at an all-time low. Then came the email from our insurance provider. They needed clarification on recent ownership changes for 3 key properties. Isabella had tried to update the policies and had finally discovered the truth. The company didn't own the land under its most profitable hotels. I did. The next morning, my father called, his voice tense. The accounting shows payments to AM Holdings. AM Holdings. Alex Mercer Holdings, I clarified. My sister had been signing off on financials for 5 years, without realizing she was approving rent payments to her own brother. There's an emergency board meeting tomorrow, he said. You need to be there. I'm not on the board, Dad. Alex, his voice softened. This is still our family business. After we hung up, my lawyer called. Pinnacle's attorneys are asking about the lease renewals. How do you want to play this? Send them the new terms, I instructed. Full market rate, no exceptions. The new lease terms were a bombshell. The favorable rates I had set 5 years ago had saved Pinnacle nearly $2 million annually. The new rates would wipe out that advantage. The day the terms were delivered, I saw Isabella's silver Mercedes pull up to the Oceana. I called Marco. Your sister's on the warpath, he said. Brought the new consultant. They're looking for blueprints, talking about a structural assessment. I think they're trying to find a way to challenge your ownership. That led me to the Public Records Office. The deeds and lease agreements were all ironclad. But in the adjacent county records, I found something else. A permit application, filed 2 years ago by Isabella under her married name. It was for a large-scale commercial property development under a new entity, Mercer Innovations, LLC. She had filed similar permits near our other 2 flagship locations. The truth hit me like a ton of bricks. She wasn't just sidelining me. She was planning to launch her own competing hotel chain using the expertise and market share we had built at Pinnacle. She fired me because I was in her way. The morning of the board meeting, I received a call from Victor Vance, one of Isabella's friends on the board. I've seen the new lease terms, he said, and I've heard things about Mercer Innovations. They're not just rumors, I told him. Danielle is going to propose that Pinnacle sell the Oceana, Burlington, and Portland properties, Victor said after a long pause. She's claiming the new lease terms make them unprofitable. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place. She wanted Pinnacle to sell the hotels at a discount so her new company could snatch them up, making her new venture my tenant. Instead of going to the board meeting, I flew to New York and met with Jonathan Sterling, the CEO of Apex Hospitality. "Interesting timing," Jonathan said, as we sat in his office overlooking Central Park. "I hear Pinnacle is looking to offload some properties." "3 of them," I confirmed, "and I own the land underneath." "So, what's your proposal, Alex?" "A partnership," I said, sliding a folder across his desk. "Apex acquires the buildings when Pinnacle sells. I retain land ownership, but grant you preferential lease terms. And most importantly, you retain all the current staff." He studied me for a moment. "Family businesses are messy." "This isn't about family anymore," I replied. "It's about protecting the people who built these hotels." 2 days later, Apex's legal team was drafting acquisition proposals. The news broke on an industry blog, and Pinnacle's stock tumbled. My father called, his voice heavy. "The board rejected her proposal to sell." "Good," I said. "She knows about your meetings with Apex. What are you trying to do, Alex?" "I'm protecting what I built," I answered, "the way you taught me." 3 weeks later, I walked into the Pinnacle conference room. Isabella sat at the head of the table, her face a mask of fury. Our father sat beside her, looking defeated. "Let's be clear," Isabella began. "My brother is attempting a hostile takeover." "Incorrect," I countered calmly, sliding folders to each board member. "I'm exercising my rights as a landowner. These documents, however, show that while serving as president of Pinnacle, Isabella was developing a competing hotel chain." The room fell silent. My father's face went pale as he read the permits for Mercer Innovations. "Is this true?" he asked her. Her silence was her confession. The board voted unanimously to accept Apex Hospitality's offer. Isabella stormed out. Victor approached me. "The board will request Isabella's resignation tomorrow. We'll need interim leadership." "It won't be me," I said. "I have other plans." 1 year later, I stood on the rooftop of what used to be the Oceana, now the Bayshore Grand, the flagship of Apex's Northeast Collection. Jonathan joined me. "Revenue is up 17%, he said. "You were right about this market." As a consulting director for Apex, I was back to doing the work I loved. Behind the scenes, building foundations. My father and I had monthly dinners. He was adjusting to retirement. Isabella's venture, Mercer Innovations, had filed for bankruptcy. I felt no satisfaction, only a quiet resolution. My phone buzzed. A text from my father. "Dinner tonight? Bringing the grandkids." I smiled. As the sun set over the harbor, I looked at the hotel, a symbol of something solid, something built to last. In the end, that's what Isabella never grasped. Success isn't about the title on your door. It's about building something strong enough to withstand any storm. I turned from the view and went downstairs. It was time for dinner with the family that mattered.